Ladies and gentlemen, I'm somewhat disappointed with Joe's comment. I thought he would, because I didn't really prepare for this panel. I was hoping that he actually going to give us all the questions so that I don't have to do anything. But he left the room with all these questions now that unanswered. So now I guess we'll leave it to the three of us to figure out how's AI going to transform businesses. So this afternoon, we have two amazing panelists together with me. You have Fred. Fred who is, I don't know how to describe you. You're an economist, you're an investor, you're a banker, you're everything. You probably have seen so many companies, because you invest in so many companies, so I'm sure you would know the right answer for us. And of course, Luanne, HSBC CEO in Hong Kong. Now, this, I'm sure, comes very close to your heart. You are by far probably the single largest employers in Hong Kong after the Jockey Club. Jockey Club got to be the largest employer after the government, and you must be next. So how would AI transform your company and perhaps also your clients? But before that, I was asked to introduce them and myself. But then, well, since the topic is on AI, so I asked AI to help us to introduce ourselves to each of you. So let's see how, let me think. Do we have the, let's see how AI will come out. Is it working? Something? I was told that they're going to let AI, here we go. All right. Although they're seated not accordingly, but it's okay. Let's see if this is correctly, Okay. Is that the right description of who we are? Let me think. Hey, Luanne, I'm going to start with you. This is way too generic about who you are. You are a prominent executive at HSBC.
Yeah.
That's not the same as CEO of HSBC.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure my boss would agree with that. It's going to get me into trouble.
And Fred, I think you're more or less correct, right? Should be, right? And for me, I am not a member of CPCCC, that's for sure, I know that. And I am definitely not the chairman of the university or HKUST. I was not the chairman. And oh boy. Okay. So now you know how much we can trust AI. I think there's still lots of room for improvement. In fact, sorry, this is asking DeepSeek. All right, because I got asked whether DeepSeek is any good. The last time I went on to check DeepSeek about who I am, it said I was born in Thailand. And that was wrong. Anyway, but at least it didn't show today. It showed something else. Anyway, so I'm going to come to the meat of the discussion now. So just to start with, Luanne, I'll start with you. This is topics about AI. So have you used it? When was the last time you used an AI, and which application do you use?
Obviously, there's DeepSeek that everybody has now. Before that, I was using Poe. But the one I think I use most, and I was just using it 2 days ago, is one that we developed ourselves internally. So one of the challenges we have as a bank is we want to use the technology to be more productive. But a lot of the information that we want to feed it is confidential. I mean, it's your banking information, it's your banking information. So we need something that's internal. So we've been trying to build that. And I use it quite often. Or even if it's a board paper that's 300 pages long, you know how these things are. I can feed it and I can send it inquiries and questions or ideas on how I should challenge it. So the internal one is probably the one I use more. It's still a proof of concept, but I really like where it's going. So that's the one I use most.
And Fred?
Well, I produce every available AI model, right? Because of my curiosity, just to test how they're doing. So like including all the GPT-4, Claude 2, Gemini, Alibaba model, Baidu model, yes, DeepSeek as well. But for my professional work, I also use more, not generally related to public, but for science, for example, for biomedicine. So that's where, you know, bit complex foundation model for biology, right? So that's not for everyday consumer use. But yeah, I think, you know, I'm very frequent user of AI. Literally, you know, every couple hours, if not hourly.
Wow, okay. And for me, well, as I wasn't kidding, I actually used DeepSeek to prepare some of my questions for this panel. So that's the last time. This is the, well, before that was Poll, because I guess technically I cannot say that I'm using a VPN to download something else. So I can't say that, so I use Poll. All right, so let me come back to Luanne again. Now, I asked that question earlier with HSBC, and how do you find AI? Are you using AI already for the bank? You said you're trying out. So how are you going to adopt AI in your everyday use of the bank? And I'm sure being a regulated entity like HSBC, you must have constraint of what you can do. So can you, any specific example you can share with the audience how AI can help the bank, but at the same time, you know, execution, how do you do that, and some constraint that you may face, regulatory concern and other types of concern?
I can spend half an hour talking about it. So, look, I think a couple of basic things that is important to understand, which is Gen AI is a new wave. It's transformational. But AI itself started many years ago. We started using AI many, many years ago. I still remember, it must be, don't quote me here, it must be almost 10 years ago now. One of the first things we used for AI, or one of the memorable AI users we used at that time, was just to make our process of refilling our ATM machines much more productive, because we need to understand what cash levels we need. So that was many, many years ago, probably 10 years ago now. So AI has been around for a long time. And I think there are a couple of common themes that we use it for. One is to improve customer service so that the tools we use for our customers are not so blunt. The other one is to do risk management, especially financial crime risk management. That's quite important. And then the third one is to protect our customers, to make sure that we're improving our productivity. If I were to use one example, we recently, I think last year, partnered with Google on a tool that is used for financial crime management. It's called Dynamic Risk Assessment. And just to give you some context, we have 40 million customers around the world, which means we process about 1.4 billion financial transactions every month. And every one of these transactions, we need to put it through a risk assessment tool to make sure that there's no financial crime associated with it. That's our responsibility. So with this tool that we're put in, AI tool that we're put in, partnered with Google, we actually are able to find 2 to 4 times more, identify 2 to 4 times more financial crime related transactions. And also the false positive numbers have gone down by 60%. So that really helps us, because this is a space, and every bank will tell you, it's a very blunt tool previously. You run it through certain rules, you get all these transactions that come up, you have a human being going one by one to check whether they are right or wrong. It's very painful. So I'm really pleased with the example. You talked about, you asked me a very long question. What was the other part of the question?
Well, you are a regulated entity, right? So
yeah, I think
any constraint?
I think even regulations aside, the limitations of Gen AI today is something that we are still learning and understanding along the way. A few well-known ones like hallucination, like the fact that it makes up stuff, you could just solve it yourselves, and be very confident about it. That's one thing. I think there's still a gap there. The other thing is what you feed it is what comes out. So data bias is a big issue, and there are firms not in Hong Kong that have been caught out with this for example, recruitment. Right, you feed in a certain set of criteria based on previous success factors, and then they use that to judge a candidate, and it turns out to be a biased decision. So companies have gotten into trouble with that as well. And then there are the negative uses of AI, like deep fakes. I mean, I've had one done of mine. It was just quite shocking and sort of sobering. So that's the deep fake ones. And I think we have to be really careful about the ethics of it. I mean, universities are running courses on data bias and ethics, and I think it's something that we need to be quite conscious about. So anything that we are using that is customer facing, we are very careful about. And I think the government has a right to be concerned about the regulations around it. And I welcome the regulations around it, because it's such an emerging space. We cannot have every company making up their own rules.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's quite important, really.
Well, we know how regulator works here. They're always risk averse by nature.
You said it, not me.
I say it, and there's nothing wrong being risk averse. But as I said, I mean, while we are thinking out the box, we think we are thinking out the box. In the meantime, we're going to pull back, but for the right reason too. Yeah. So the question is, how exactly we're going to find that right balance?
So if you don't mind, I just. The government came up with a policy, I think it was late last year. Shortly after that, SFC and HKMA developed a sandbox. And I think that's the absolute right thing to do. So we are a keen participant in that sandbox. We've got use cases there. But it's that private, public coming together, saying these are the use cases you want to play around with, test your regulation, test our technology, test the customer feedback. And you have a safe space for everyone to experiment before going out. Yeah. And I think that's the right thing to do. Yeah.
So Fred, I turn to you, because you invest in so many companies, you sit on so many boards. You're on the board of ICBC, you're on board of UBS, right? You're on so many things. You've seen so many companies. So is there any specific example that you can share with us where you find AI is actually helping to enhance the resilience of the financial sectors, right? Any concrete example? Bear in mind what already Luanne shared with us from the HSBC perspective.
Right. So financial service industry, banking sector, if you think about it, is really primary use cases for AI, because it's a very data-rich industry with high frequency of transactions, at all levels, right? Whether it's just deposits, credit extension, forex trading, and investing, so on and so forth. So, obviously the primary is really how to enhance enterprise productivity, right? To make the whole operation much more efficient. I think you articulated very, very clearly. Back office, to a large degree, still very time-consuming, cumbersome, even manually driven paper, floating like kind of, So with the AI, they could be fully automated, right? So it's dramatic reduction in costs and the increase in efficiency, and then enhance the customer experience. So that's on the positive side. But you asked the question specifically how AI can enhance the financial sector resilience. The answer is yes, right? Actually, you would give the example in HSBC how to do fraud detection, right? So traditional way of doing fraud detection, oftentimes has a very high false positive, rate, right? But now with AI, can really identify, emerging pattern of possible fraud, but minimize the false, signal. So that's a very good example. But more important, I would highlight, I don't know if anyone in the audience have heard about the stress test, right? Since 2008, stress test has become the butter and the bread for banks like HSBC or ICBC, but also for regulators like HKMA or the IMF, the Fed. But how you do stress test is very much rely on historical data, static models, and very selective predetermined scenario. Like say, if Hong Kong economy, hits into, recession, 5% negative growth, real estate price plunged by 25%, Hang Seng plunged by, 30%, what will happen, right? But, that kind of exercise is useful, but its ability to detect financial stress or crisis is quite limited, okay? Now with the general AI, I think we can enhance, we can vastly improve the quality, reliability of stress tests.
Yep.
For example, dynamic scenario generation. Okay, it's not just three of us decide what will be the scenario, right? They can create, infinite range of different scenarios. Okay, that's very helpful for stress test. Second is really data. Right? AI is about working with a massive amount of data, but historically, the stress test is statistical model, so rely on numerical data. But AI can use text, can use video, lot of unstructured data from social media. I think actually in 2023 with the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, there's a lot of concern about the risk contagion into other regional banks, right? So actually you can analyze social media data to detect whether it's how likely the bank run or deposit moving away from other small banks to big banks like JP Morgan or HSBC, right? So all these are examples that with AI, stress tests finally can be useful, right? So we don't have a false comfort, because HSBC submitted like stress test results to HKMA, we can all sleep at Sunday at night. But with AI, I would say, Georgia or Mark Tucker can all sleep better at night.
All right, now now this next question, it's for me to make sure that Joe knows that I listened to his comment, because in his remark, I wrote this down, Joe. I wrote this down. So you talk about the human-centric AI. So my question to you, Fred, is, all right, so how do you think, I mean, not at the philosophical level, like seriously though, at the human-centric AI, how would that transform, perhaps, or reshape the so-called customer experiences, right? And also maybe, since you talk about risk assessment, right? As well as even, I guess, within the workforce dynamic within the company, right? How do you foresee that coming?
Well, so the recent advancement of AI is really about our ability to, make sense of the vast amount of data, right? With the structured data or unstructured data, so we can get the intelligence, enhance our, productivity and risk management and so on and so forth. But the downside, right, is privacy, safety, but I think more, I would say even bigger threat is like a replacement of human, okay? So I'm not worried about the kind of doomsday scenario, because AI, as powerful as it may be, can never fully replace human. That goes to the heart of Joe's comments, right? Because the human, why we are not becoming the dominant species, not because we are just the bigger, stronger or heavier, but because we're intelligent. But not just cognitive intelligence, but rather we are also emotionally intelligent. Humans can work together as a team in an organization like Alibaba or HSBC, or as a society in Hong Kong, in China, or in the world, right? That, I think, is still improving with AI can do that, right? So I'm not, how would respond to the AI challenge in terms of labor market? My view is that, instead of trying to limit or slow the adoption of AI technology per se, I think we need to really holistically review our current education system, from kindergarten, K-12, to all the way to university and graduate school, right? Because the current education system is very much cognitive intelligence based, okay, knowledge acquisition based. But we need to really incorporate the emotional intelligence love, empathy, cooperation, as well as critical thinking. So even in the age of AI, human will not risk being replaced. In fact, human still has the upper hand because we know how to regulate AI, and also in the future, say 2050, when we have much fewer new births, like fewer human can still work, with smart robots, because we can offer something AI or even the most intelligent humanoids will never have, which is empathy, emotional intelligence, love, understanding.
Well, you bring up an even bigger topic now. How are we going to train the next generation? What are we training them? Much bigger topic than just this topic alone. But before I go there, let me come back to Luanne as well. Now, I agree with Fred. But here you are, HSBC have what, 200,000 people worldwide? More than that, right? More than 200,000 people. Now, you hear about this AI now, day in, day out. You hear about this all the time. And typically, you get two types of responses. Some are so excited about it because it's going to transform a lot of things, right? At the same time, you also hear another side saying, oh my God, we're going to lose half of the people, right? Because you don't, from many sources I hear, you lose half of the workforce. You don't need half the workforce. But how are you going to create a buy-in in that transformation? When talk is easy, but that transformation, execution, how are you going to embrace it? Now, yes, Fred, you're right. Maybe 2 generations later, we have the right sort of skill set that needed, empathy and EQ. But how do you deal with the people today? Right? So how would you prepare your colleagues in HSBC to embrace this inevitable change?
I think let me start perhaps with the few things we see on workforce and the impact on workforce, right? The first is how we use it to augment and improve our productivity. So for people like you and me, as I said, or for Fred, it's not spending 5 hours reading a 300-page board paper, perhaps, because it can help you. It can help you learn about new things. You can go onto DeepSeek or any AI platform now and pick a topic like quantum computing, and you can say, tell me about quantum computing like I'm a 5-year-old. And it can give you the 5-year-old version. And if you're thinking a bit more confident, you can say, tell me about it like I'm an 18-year-old. So that learning and the augmentation, I think, is quite important. And it means, hopefully, that instead of working 15 hours a day, we can work 12 hours a day. The second one is where jobs that exist today may not exist anymore tomorrow. Now, I think this is my personal view. This is a tale as old as time. I remember when I first started in banking, some 30 years ago, and my first job was in a bank branch. There were 2 people employed there whose job was telephone operator. And they had this big machine, and they picked up the phone and then did the transfer to someone. Those jobs don't exist anymore. I remember 25 years ago, as part of a promotion criteria, I had to give a presentation to a leadership team, and it was about OCR, optical character recognition at that time. And that was the next big thing because you no longer have to do data entry. You scan your forms and and that was 25 years ago. So I think the fact that we're talking about it in relation to AI is one thing, but technology, the development of technology over time has already impacted jobs along the way. And we have adapted to it. We have retrained, we have reskilled. So I think the focus is not on how many jobs can you get rid of. The focus is how much more my business can grow without adding the same amount of cost. Because your products and your services will keep growing. People's demands on your products and services will keep growing. But it's not tenable to have every time I increase this much business, I need to increase this much cost. That linear equation cannot work. So I think the focus should be on how much more I can grow without increasing the same amount of cost. That's the second point. The third point, I think, perhaps more importantly, when we look at AI and the jobs, is the changes at the societal level. which we have seen in relation to the growth of technology. I mean, I would argue one of the big things that 5G brought us was online shopping. And that got made a lot more intense with COVID, clearly. So what does that mean for retail shop owners? What does that mean for the property market? So the whole changes in a societal level, that's really important. Another example I often quote is how easy it is today to be an entrepreneur. You know, compared to before, you have to rent a little shop, you have to hire an accountant, a lawyer. Today, to be an entrepreneur, you just need to have a set of AI tools. So if I want to be a consultant, a freelance consultant, I can get tools to write marketing materials for me. I can get tools to write a business plan. Funny example, I went to DeepSeek and I told them to write, I asked DeepSeek to write a business plan for me for the bank in Hong Kong based on public information. It's quite clever, I have to say, the outcome. So it's so much easier to be an entrepreneur today. So business founders will be a lot more than before compared to employed individuals. What does it mean for the bank? How do we bank them differently? So I think these societal level changes are perhaps more important on what does that mean for my future business model. One last example. People used to come to the branch for every single thing. And that branch is where I talk to the customer about my new products, my new services, what's going on. They don't come to the branch anymore. How do I get that message across? Is mobile the best way? So the way that society has changed means the way we do business has to change. I think that is more the crucial question that needs to be answered.
Yeah.
Sorry, thanks.
By the way, it doesn't actually mean that it's easier to open an account with HSBC. Huh? It's equally as difficult as before.
I will get AI to help us, but not.
Now, we only have less than 3 minutes left. I have to leave this time to any questions from the floor for our panelists, including myself, if anyone have any questions for us. Can I see? Oh.
Just for everybody in the audience, in case you're not aware of how to pose your questions. So if you go to the JUMPSTARTER portal that is on your cell phone, go to agenda of the current session, and there is a button that says live Q&A. So everyone, please go to JUMPSTARTER portal, agenda, current session, and click on the Q&A button to submit any questions that you might have.
Melody, we have any questions now?
Let me just take a quick look. Give me just 2 seconds
if not,
and see.
I'm going to ask my panelists.
Do we have any questions?
While you check, I'll ask maybe Fred or Luanne. So that all sounds great, but how are we going to reskill our current colleagues, employees in the company, right? How do you reskill them? Anyone? Fred, you want to go first?
I think at the fundamental level, right, it's really overhauling our existing education system, which if you think about it, was created in the first industrial revolution, okay, 200, maybe 300 years ago. That hasn't changed. The fixed, curriculum, standardized the measurement of academic aptitude, right? So that has served well for the first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution, but it's for the AI revolution. Maybe it's less well equipped, right? That's the one. The second, actually, companies like HSBC or Alibaba would also really, the new recruit will have different requirement, right? In terms of what will be qualified, employee, but also existing employee. I think it's the training, again, helped by AI, so they can continuously, upgrade the skill set and also adapt to new functions, new responsibilities, just make human workforce a lot more adaptable, much more flexible, or in using your word, much more resilient to a kind of technological shock.
Yeah.
I think we need to take the fear away.
That's it.
It really is the fear of it taking away your job, but also the fear of something so complex and technical. And there is a resistance to learn. So we've set up an AI academy, and it has sort of, like you go to university 101, 201 courses, so it goes basic AI, and then it goes on to once you're more comfortable, you go to prompt engineering, for example, and then you go to the next one. Your question.
All right, so we
have... Finish.
So that's one thing, and to make sure that you have a network of support for the colleagues. But I'll see what.
What question do you have?
Yes, so I'll read it out.
Yes.
So the first one is artificial intelligence has far-reaching implications across various functions, both within the organization and in enhancing customer experiences. Now, what would you say is your top priority in this area at this moment? This is the first question.
What's the second? We only have time for.
Sure.
Can you
The
ask?
second one is artificial intelligence has far-reaching implications across various functions, both within the organization and in enhancing customer experiences. What would you say is also your
All right. So
main focus?
I would really love for a day where we are more comfortable with using Gen AI in customer-facing tools. But my top priority as a bank is to ensure that we are comfortable with the governance, the risk, the ethics, the privacy before we even go there. That, to me, is top priority. It has to be safe for my customers and for the bank.
Fred.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, as Alibaba would say, there are a lot of pain points, right, in any organization, in the industry. I think the AI would have the potential to really resolve those pain points. Whether it's, frustration with the, opening a bank account, customer service, or maybe risk management, right, which is also obviously very big. I do think with the AI, you can, reap some of the low-hanging fruits. Even while limiting the downside risks.
Yeah. Well, I think we all can agree AI is here to stay. The question is, how are we going to embrace it? I think those of you coming to the Jumpstarter event, you already have the buy-in. I'm not worried about any one of you. I worry about the rest of the community, where many of them were probably in denial. They don't want to deal with it, and they gave up. I think that's the worst part. So it's how we collectively, as a community, as both as an employer, employee, how we're going to help the society to embrace it and create that buy-in. I think that's probably the next level of challenges. And how do we set the rules, as you both said earlier? How do you set the rules? Like Joe said it, it's up to us to decide what to put in. So I think that's important, and that should be an effort not just by those who are involved, but as a society as a whole, right? So hopefully that will create a little bit of that buy-in. If it's just only stay at our level, then I think we're going to leave behind a lot of people, right? In desperation. Yeah, we don't want that. So, but this is definitely a very exciting journey that we all need to find one way or the other to embrace it, and hopefully we bring everyone along. Right, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and please, on behalf of everyone, thank you, our two panelists. And I hope that we can open bank account easier at HSBC with the help of AI. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Alibaba Jumpstarter, for letting us have this chance to share with you. Thank you.